at the beginning of the universe. So how can you speak about time before, what happened before, etc.? So that's one question. And the you know what? Let's just do that for now. I'm doing this for the first time speaking on live stream, so I'm sort of forgetting everything. But this is good for now.
Jazakallah khair, bro. Shouldn't,
Yeah, so with regards to the time question, so with regards to the contingency argument, this is not a problem. Okay. So because the contingency argument doesn't necessarily postulate that the universe had to have a beginning. Even if you believe in an eternal universe, which obviously we don't believe in Islamic discourse, but just hypothetically speaking, even if you believe in an eternal universe, which would really remove the idea of time, or at least the idea of physical time, it doesn't really affect the argument. This contention, this detraction only affects what you call a cosmological argument with regards to the Kalam cosmological argument or related arguments. Because if you postulate a beginning for the universe and you're saying whatever begins to exist has a cause, and then someone says, well, hold on a second, time began at the beginning of the universe, so outside of the universe there is no time, so cause and effect doesn't exist, because cause and effect only exists with the idea of time. That's where the detraction is. Okay, so the best way to do this is just to read an answer that I wrote in the book, right? So if you just pick up my book, bro, it's somewhere there you go. Yeah, I think this is the easiest way, and I think this is probably one of the best answers. But you need to understand this doesn't affect the contingency argument. Okay, and that's why the contingency argument is very, very powerful, because any science that you bring to it, or even things to do with time, it transcends that, because it's based on first principles, it's based on the principle of sufficient reason, and so on and so forth. And as we said previously, please read the relevant chapter called The Argument from Dependency in this book, and read Muhammad Hijab's book, The Burhan, which goes into details and deals with some of these objections as well. But in terms of the specific objection that you raised concerning time and causality, I think the best way to do it is to literally do a book reading, if you don't mind, sir. So just bear with me. There you go. So it's called A Note on Causality, Time, and the Big Bang. So some objectors argue that causality only makes sense with time. They maintain that since time began at the Big Bang, we cannot claim something caused the universe because there was no before at the beginning of the Big Bang. In absence of time, there is no cause or effect, because cause comes before effect. There are a few problems with this objection. The view that causality can only make sense with time requires proof. In philosophy, there is no consensus on the definition on the nature of causality, specifically the nature of the causal link. There are various approaches that attempt to define and understand causality and causal relations. One such approach is simultaneous causality. This is the view that causes always occur simultaneously with the immediate effects. One could argue that the universe and its cause occurred at the same time. The following thought experiment explains such causal relation. Imagine an eternal ball on an eternal pillow. The ball causes the indentation of the pillow, but the cause, which is the ball, does not come before the effect, which is the indentation of the pillow, as time is not a factor due to the eternality of the objects. In the context of this argument, it could be that the moment God brought the universe into existence was the moment the universe came into being. This type of causation is atemporal. This means that the cause, in this case, God's will and power, occurred prior causally, but not prior temporally, not prior in time. The cause and effect occurred simultaneously. Another point. This argument assumes that there is a consensus on the notion of time in science. There are different notions of time in quantum mechanics and in general relativity. To assume that there is only one conception of time misrepresents the literature. Next point, and this is quite a powerful point. This objection is self-defeating. If causality cannot exist without time, then the Big Bang should be rejected. Given that at the point of the Big Bang singularity, there was no time, but a boundary to time, which is t is equal to 0, time is equal to 0, and the boundary is obviously causally connected to the rest of the universe, then how can this causal relation make sense with no time? If the objectors accept the boundary is causally connected to the rest of the universe, they should also accept the same atemporal causal relation when God decided to manifest his will and power to create the universe. If they maintain that causality doesn't make sense outside of time, they will have to reject the causal relation between the boundary of the singularity to the rest of the universe, which is tantamount to rejecting the existence of the universe. The objector can argue that some physicists maintain that the universe has no boundary. This, however, is a contentious issue with no consensus. So from this perspective, these are three major points that this detraction is not a valid detraction. So I hope that makes sense, my brother.
Sure, it does, brother, and I'm definitely gonna start doing some reading on that. I'm already started with the Burhan, and definitely gonna check out Divine Reality as well.
Sure. But also remember, bro, when most atheists get to this level of discussion where they're talking about things they have absolutely no clue about, none of us have any clue about in these cases.
Yeah, honestly.
Time existing, it shows that they just trying to find excuses, any excuse to deny God. So they rather
true.
take the discussion into this sort of fluffy area, just to get away from acknowledging Allah.
I tell you a story.
Because at that point it's theoretical. That's true.
Yes. Well, even that,
the burden of proof is on them to a certain extent if they deny it.
Well, brother, there's a philosophical hair splitting. So, and that usually is an indication that something else is going on. I'll give you an example. There was an atheist, I think he came from Pakistan. He met me at university in England when I gave a lecture, and I'm paraphrasing the story. He comes up to me and says, "Oh, Hamza, your argument for God's existence doesn't make sense because causality doesn't make sense outside of the universe." Now, I could have given him, a Kantian example. I could have given, I think it's a Kantian example. I could have showed him that causality is a priori, it's prior to experience. But what I sensed was that he didn't know what he's talking about. So I said to him, "What do you mean by causality?" And we had a discussion because in Western metaphysics, the notion or the idea of the causal relation, there is no consensus on what is the nature of the causal relation. And do you know what he says to me? He says to me, "I don't know." And I was like, hold on a second.
They don't know their labels.
You try to refute God by using a term and you don't know the meaning of that term. And I was like, what's going on, man? After conversation and trying to be nice to him, do you know what he said to me? He came from a secular family. He didn't know how to connect to God. Yeah. May Allah bless you, bro. We have to move on because we'll have to go shortly. So we're going to take as many questions.
Definitely. No problem.
Allah
bless you guys. Take care. Love your work. Awesome.
Okay, so kick from studio. Who do we have? We have Imran, this person, Jasper.
Assalamu alaikum. Hello, Jasper. Can you hear us?
Jasper. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers.
Alaikum.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hello.
Can you put your volume down? Or put the TV off or the screen off? He dropped. Yeah. Okay, sorry. Apologies. Okay, so now let's take August Boz. Assalamu alaikum, August Boz.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Can you hear me?
Yes, alhamdulillah. How are you, brother?
I'm fine, and you?
Alhamdulillah.
So I have a question about recently I had a discussion with a brother about the eternality